We are watching People Along the Mississippi, directed by Gordon Weisenborn. Interesting. Publication date 1950. And unlike a lot of the other stuff we watched, this has a very brief description that is what interested me in watching it in the first place. And it reads, as far as we have been able to determine, this film is the first nationally distributed educational film to embrace the interaction of races and cultures in the United States. What a big statement. I want to read that again. The first nationally distributed educational film to embrace the interaction of races and culture in the United States. I don't know exactly what that means, what it means by races and cultures, and the first one to ever be distributed. I don't know how special that is, but I thought that was interesting. I'm so curious what it's about, so without further ado, this is People Along the Mississippi. EB Films. I'm pretty sure that's the Encyclopedia Britannica films, which we've watched a few other programs before. They're pretty good. I expected this to be moderate. I'm a little worried based on the description that it'll be racy or I don't know, that it might get me demonetized somehow, but I'm hoping that the Encyclopedia Britannica can do me right and get me all the way through this with my monetization intact. Let's see. Oh, dude, this music, this is a great guitar riff. I'm already enjoying this a lot. All right, produced by Encyclopedia Britannica Films, I was right, in collaboration with Clarence Sorensen, the Illinois State Normal University, and under the supervision of Gordon Weisenborn. All right.
From the Minnesota headwaters to the Gulf of Mexico, the ground runs with water.
And this is a great classic, deep American voiceover. I don't know how else to describe it, but it is this puts you in a time and a place for sure, hearing that sort of voice.
The long grip of winter is broken. But north, far north of here, a colder, slower spring comes to the northern wilderness, to the source of the river, Lake Itasca. And here, with the Minnesota spring, a story begins, which traces the mighty course of the Mississippi itself. But it begins here, where the river begins, with a mailbox on a lonely north country road, and a farm boy.
What does this say? The Biggrass? The Biggrass? Interesting.
And a farm boy who had faith in winds and river currents, and something more. Faith in people along the Mississippi.
Oh, they said the title. There you go. It's also wild to see part of America displayed in such a rural setting. Obviously, there are still rural parts of the Mississippi even today, but this seems especially rural. It's rural, and it doesn't have a highway going through it. I guess that's the difference. It's it's true rural. It has dirt roads, not expressways. Again, this is some great guitar music. I was not expecting this. It's almost like a Spanish guitar or something.
He'd wanted to go down the big river himself, but instead, all through the long winter evenings, he'd carved a small boat.
Migra, RFD 7, Itasca, Minnesota. I christen thee the Mississippi.
Away.
See, I can't quite tell what this even is yet. So it says it was the first nationally distributed educational film, but distributed to where? Again, was this put in schools? Were kids made to watch this? What is the context in which, what even is the audience? I don't know. This is an amazing shot though, right here, this perspective shot of the sail as it sails down.
And with it his big winter dreams.
Do you think it'll make it?
Dude, look at this kid's cuffed jeans. What a fashion icon.
Do you think it'll make it?
He asked his brother Hans.
Will people be too busy to bother with it?
Few people will see it at first. Deer or beaver may note its silent passage through their forest. Or perhaps a turtle. Then through desolate cut-over timberlands. And then miles down the river through rapids.
This is a nice start. I feel like this is not what I was expecting at all. I felt like we were going to get a much more, how do I say this? A much more anthropological view of the Mississippi, but I guess there's still time, so let's see.
Twisting and turning, then flowing south down the great river valley.
Oh man, here's another good map. See, I'm a sucker for maps, especially old maps, but this one is especially good. I like how they have the tapering of the rivers and everything. Like this took a lot of time to make, I think.
The American heartland. 2,400 wandering miles to go before it reaches the river's end and waiting hands at the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, it might.
Oh, it couldn't. Not in 1,000 years.
It could.
You mean, if you're up where the Mississippi begins, and you send something down, it'd get all the way here to the Gulf?
It might, too.
See, I just feel like that is actually just not possible. No offense. Not to rain on anyone's parade, but if you put a boat in the Mississippi River all the way in Minnesota, I don't think it would reach the Delta.
But now it rests in a Minnesota thicket.
Yeah, see, this is exactly what would happen to it. Like 5 feet down the stream, it would get stuck and it would never move again.
Who knows who might help it on its way?
Oh gosh. Okay, here we go. Here's the embrace of the interaction of races and cultures.
Here they come. There's that pesky redskin.
Oh wow, alright, so we just got a term that probably they have not heard in a very long time, but also we have the classic like Native American war cry that I don't know if is actual real or is just like another like stereotype. See, that's interesting to think that kids actually did play, like, I guess cowboys and Indians or whatever you want to call it, but it's interesting to think that they actually played this with, like, native people. I guess I always just assumed, like, the settler kids would play cowboys and Indians, but I guess it is, like, it's kind of nice to think that, I don't know if it's nice or, like, really mean to think that, like, white kids would play with Native American kids, cowboys and Indians. You know, like that seems a little on the nose, but it's also like cultural, I don't know.
Dear Robert Begra, I was headed home across the shallow spot in the river when it happened. There was the Mississippi. It had been floating.
Wait, so are these supposed to be Native American children, or are these people just dressing up?
And all the time we were playing cowboys and Indians. Of course, none of us are real cowboys around here, but we're real honest-to-goodness Indians, Chippewa.
Oh, okay, so they are Native Americans. That's what I thought. I didn't want to say that, but they are Chippewa Indians. Native Americans.
Like my grandmother now. She speaks only Chippewa, and she wishes I spoke it more than I do.
That's so fascinating to see these kids already becoming, you know, overtaken with English lessons. Because that's happening, you know, now. I guess it's been happening for a very long time, but it's just wild. How old is this, from 1952? Yeah, just like the same things that are happening now were happening all the way back then too. It's wild to see that put so presciently in like the voice of a child.
She calls me Nakwayase, which means he walks in the noon. But I have an American name, too, and a bicycle, just like other kids. I be playing...
Wow, so this is kind of just like a study on, like, the the civilizing of the Native American kids. This is interesting. This is actually so fascinating because this is a preserved glance into, like, the civilizing society, I guess, is, like, what these people were forced into. It's just, this is providing us with a rare glance into what their life looked like. They might be making their living conditions look better than they actually were. That is totally possible, but it's interesting at the very least that we're getting to see them at all.
Baseball right now, except I have to take my father's lunch to him. He's a lumberjack, drives a tractor in the timber.
See, this is crazy because, like, from an American perspective, I feel like a lumberjack is just like, it's an old-timey job, but it is like a respectable, like, manly thing that has to get done. But I can only imagine, like, how much it must have burned being an American and being a Native American and being forced to take a job in lumberjacking or in timber, just like willfully destroying your own environment in order to survive and not be in poverty, or not be in poverty so bad.
Saturday afternoon's our day to go to town. I guess it's the same with you, Robert. Anyway, outside one of the stores on Main Street, we got an idea.
Did stores really work like this back in the day? You would go to the window and people would actually, like, serve you? Like, I'm curious. Is this an invention, or did America used to be like this?
Robert, we added something new to your boat. A totem pole to guide it safely on its way.
Oh, that's cool. I think this is going to be a very anthropological view of the Mississippi. I'm glad for that. I'm excited for the rest of this.
And so, bobbing its thanks upon every wave, the Mississippi leaves its Chippewa friends, and after days or weeks, leaves the North Country wilderness. Now, strange new sights.
It's crazy that these power lines look exactly the same as they do now. I know that is also, like, just a stupid thing to kind of say, but, like, nothing has changed about these, like, we are still living in the same technology that was available in the 1950s and even earlier. That is like the peak design. Like, there is no better way to design a power line, tower besides that.
Power lines and tall bridges spanning the river. Industries making important noises along the bank, frowning down upon our tiny craft. Bustling cities,
Yeah, I can only imagine how polluted the Mississippi must have been during this time. It's polluted now, but I can only imagine it must have been far worse back then when there were barely any environmental regulations of any kind.
Wing, Brainerd, Little Falls, and at last the first river giants, Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Yeah, like, look at this rural townstead or homestead right here with the U.S. mailbox. It's wild to see this form of, like, settler living. That's really what it is. It's like a settler aesthetic that's going on right here, like the U.S. settler aesthetic. And it's just wild to see that, like, in real flesh, like on film. Like, this is not a set on a movie or anything. Like, this is like a real settler's house and what it looked like, and real settler's farm and property, Like, this is how they developed their land.
Dear Robert Begraw, guess where your little boat is now? It's sailing in a river that's busy with towboats and barges and great dredges that dig away year after year, keeping the channel open for navigation. This is the river I know, for I am a river captain. And here's how I first saw your little boat, the Mississippi.
Hey, look at that.
They had found it, Robert, just about the time
What is the accent this guy's doing? Is he, like, Irish? He's not Southern, that's for sure.
my towboat was ready to shove off downriver.
Is this like a stereotype, like the Irish steamboat captain or something?
My daughter Tina and her friend Bill had come down to see me off.
Dude, I like how this American kid is still just wearing a graphic tee, though. That is something that is so similar to what people wear nowadays. Like, this kid's fit still works, This girl, she's got socks and sandals. I don't know. I don't know if she might get laughed at school. But this kid, like, you could show up to school tomorrow like that kid.
Oh, hi, Captain.
I said goodbye to them, but although I didn't know it then, I didn't say goodbye to your boat, for Tina and Bill had a plan. All right, cast off. Robert. That's how your vessel got tied on mine. Anyway, you're welcome to tag along with us down to St. Louis, down one of the richest river valleys in the world. You are going down with a freight train of the river, a towboat. Besides your little boat, we are navigating a string of oil barges wider and longer than the Queen Mary. Our first stop, by the way, will be La Crosse, Wisconsin. One of our crew members...
See, I feel like I'm getting a geography lesson on like the upper Midwest of the U.S. just by this. Calling all the cities along the Mississippi River.
Pete Shaw is getting married there. Pete claims he's not nervous, but I've got an idea he's doing a pretty good job of covering up.
What a weird detail to include, that this guy's getting married but nervous, but says he isn't nervous, but you think he really is nervous. Like what weird gossip to include.
Here's the lock where Pete gets off. Pete comes from Arkansas. He's a long way from home.
Dude, I love the tight white t-shirt look that everyone's rocking in this age, though. I really do agree with it.
Pete told me about the wedding afterwards, how everything Karen pointed out to him seemed strange. The rolling countryside and the way they farmed, and the names of the people whose farms they passed, Swenson, Bergstrom, and Holmquist. Karen never guessed it, but the sight of a Wisconsin dairy farm made Pete long to see cotton growing in Arkansas.
It's so funny that they're acting like this is some like new world that he's discovering. Like he's just seeing farms.
And then, Karen's home. Pete felt like a stranger and wondered what...
Dang, that's just her home? Like all of these buildings are just like her farm home?
...was in store for him. There hadn't been many people at the wedding, he told me. Guess he figured people just weren't very friendly in that part of the country. But then, all of a sudden, how wrong can you be, Pete wondered. The people whose names were Bergstrom and Holmquist and Swenson, in fact...
Bergstrom and Hornstrom and Swinton? Is this like, what very specific like European ethnicity is this that all these people come from, that they have these last names? I'm like... Bergstrom? Who is it? What? Oh my God, it's like, it's Scandinavian or something.
All the neighbors from miles around gave them a real old-fashioned welcome. Pete found out that people in Wisconsin aren't too much different from those in Arkansas.
Is that true? People in Wisconsin aren't too different from people in Arkansas? Let me know. Let me know in the comments if that's true.
But later that night, somewhere down the river from La Crosse, there was a floating, uprooted tree. And the line to your boat snapped.
Towboat astern!
Then another towboat looming out of the darkness. And that, Robert, was the last...
I can barely see anything that's happening on screen as well. That's not just you watching at home. Like, there's barely any light on this, but we'll get through it, trust me.
we saw of your little boat.
Boy, that water's cold today.
It's colder than this last year.
No, it wasn't.
Was too. Hey, what's that out there? Looks like a boat or something.
What is it, Hans?
Hey, fellas, look at this. Dear Robert Bigra, I found the Mississippi in our gang swimming hole. It was pretty banged up, so I decided to take it home with me. Your name's French, Robert, and mine's German. Hans Kruger. I live on
Hans Kruger? Is that what he just said his name was?
a farm near Guttenberg, Iowa. Most of the people
Gutenberg,
who
Iowa.
in this part of the country came from Germany a long time ago.
See, that's what's so bizarre is like this is taking place in a period in American history where there were like discernible European ethnic groups here. Like this kid is specifically German with a specifically like German accent. Like you don't get that anymore, right? Like this kid had some immigrant history, whereas like most random white kids along the Mississippi nowadays are far detached from any German relatives they might have had. But it's fascinating that we get to see a study in the anthropology, is really what it is, of the different ethnicities or ethnography, I guess, of the Mississippi River through this. This is a more complex subject than I actually gave it credit for in the beginning.
German stonemasons built this church we go to. It's about 100 years old. And you ought to see the riverfront street in Guttenberg. My great-grandmother says it looks just like a little German town. But you can't prove it by me.
See, that's so funny. Like the very beginnings of this town was like a German town. The German immigrant influence especially is like not felt anymore. So it's so fascinating to see like the history of this town be like influenced by the German, building aesthetic, the German architecture. That's something that I bet all these buildings are knocked down now. I bet you could go to even the same exact spot and you wouldn't get to see what you're seeing through this film here. Again, that's part of the value of watching this old stuff, is you get to see history in its original state, I guess, a lot of the time.
And you ought to see the riverfront street in Guttenberg. My great-grandmother says it looks just like a little German town. But you can't prove it by me. The country near the river is one hill after another, but it's some of the best farming land in Iowa. That's something I do know about. I just got home in time that day I found your boat. It was Saturday, and just about every Saturday our family goes to Dubuque. My mother was going shopping, but my dad and I, we were...
Dude, what's so funny about that dress? Was that a houndstooth dress? Like, yeah, the fashion honestly hasn't even changed that much either. Like, this is, I guess, still a perfectly acceptable piece of clothing to wear. Obviously, like, yeah, it's fine, but it's like, it's not just acceptable, it's still like a fashionable thing to wear, I guess, is what I really mean. At least by my perspective, again. But what do I know? I'm wearing a white t-shirt.
But my dad and I, we were going to sell Frida. Frida's a heifer, you see, and a heifer's a young cow that hasn't had a calf yet. Anyway, Frida was on her way to the Dubuque auction barn.
I should have known we would have ended at a cattle auction house with the title People Along the Mississippi. I guess I lapsed my judgment a little bit too much, but it feels like we're at home now. No way this was real. I mean, like, I know I've heard like auctioneers before, but like this just seems so bizarre.
All right, boys, we got a good drove of steers here. Now, where do you want to start them at, Bob?
I'm glad we just got to watch an authentic 1950s Mississippi River auction, a cattle auction. That is like achievement unlocked. I feel like no one's done that in a very long time.
What's the money on them? Good load of Herefords here, Freddie.
Hi, Hans. What you got?
A boat? Not much of a boat. Not worth trading for.
It's so funny to think that all these kids are German, or like supposed to be German, living in this like German American town. His name is Hans. He's not Hans, they call him Hans.
Came all the way down from the beginning of the Mississippi River, almost 1,000 miles.
It did? Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell that like the voice is not lining up with the mouth though. This is all ADR. It's done recorded afterwards. It's funny that you can tell so obviously.
Let's see it.
Yeah, let's see it.
Boy, look at that.
Wonder how long it's taken to get here.
Hans, I'll trade you my pocket knife for it. Okay, I'll throw in this.
This kid's striped shirt too. This is like they're already wearing such American
That's a
clothes.
neat compass. Sure is, Hans. Hey, why not put it on the boat?
You mean put my compass on your boat?
Sure, boat needs a compass, doesn't it? Gee, Terry, if you put it on, it'll sort of be your boat, too.
And it'll help it go in the right direction.
Tell the pairmen so much ahead. What do you call? $50 now, 5, it's 5, it's 5, now,
All right, let's go get it fixed up.
Well, that's how it was, Robert. We all went over to the Dubuque shipyard, where they build big river barges and towboats.
I love the shot of them just like happily skipping towards the shipyard. Like all the director said was like, be excited and run over there. It's funny, like it's not too controlled. It's just a bunch of kids running.
Hey, where do you kids think you're going?
Boy, were we...
Like they're just giving these kids the instruction of like run through this shipyard. Like now I feel like you would have to do that on like green screen because you couldn't have real kids in an actual shipyard. What a nice shirt this kid's wearing though. Like this pattern, this is nice. Holy moly. Is this just like the German kid's like nice sweater t-shirt?
I told him about your boat, that we just put a compass on it and wanted to launch it.
Okay, fellas, go ahead.
Gee, thanks, mister. Yeah, thanks.
I wonder where it'll go now.
It has come from the Minnesota.
You know, this is doing such a great job of making America seem like a magical place, but it's just so funny knowing that like these places now are just like the most regular, mundane places in the world.
The headwaters to St. Paul. From St. Paul to La Crosse, Wisconsin River City.
Dude, we're getting like a map with a location overlay, just like in Indiana Jones.
From La Crosse to Dubuque on Iowa shores. And at last,
What a cool animation, though. It's a shame that it's covered up by this other overlay layer, but it is like impressive for its time at least.
St. Louis, largest river city of them all. Nerve center of the modern river, but city of century-old levees. Here, the Mississippi pauses, but not for long. A little girl whose great-grandparents journeyed overland in a covered wagon ties a toy packet
Great-grandparents traveled overland in a covered wagon. So what specific ethno group is she supposed to be from?
in tow. A dime store reminder of the river Tom Sawyer knew. Now, from St.
Wow, that was quick. So like everyone else got like their long, like prolonged story about finding a special relic to put on the boat, but she was just like ready to go. Like she got like 1 second screen time, whereas everyone else got like a minute or two at least.
Louis on down, the levied river of small southern towns, of cotton, scorching summer sun, of yearly flood.
Hey, what's that down there? Dear Robert Bigra, that was the first time my friend Paul and I saw your boat. We tried to get it, but the levee...
See, this is cool. So yeah, I guess we're getting into the cotton part of the Mississippi, I think, or the plantation part of the Mississippi at least. So this should be interesting. This should be like the final stop, I think.
It dropped off too steep, and the current was taking it away. The river was pretty high for that time of the year. There were flood warnings out.
It's funny to see, like, even at this time, 52, like, you're seeing, you know, an African-American kid and a white kid just, like, hanging out being best friends. Like, that is, like, I don't know, that's a degree of heartwarming to see, even back then. I guess this was, like, what, the first nationally distributed educational film to embrace the interaction of races and culture in the United States. But even still, like, it's just nice to see that even back then there was this idea of cooperation and, you know, unity amongst all.
The press was supposed to reach our town the next day. We watched it till it disappeared, and then said goodbye to each other. Paul and I had always been good friends, ever since we were real young. But lately, we hadn't been seeing too much of each other. Just happened to meet on the levee that day, the day the flood took your boat away.
Dang, is this like a flooded street right here? This is definitely not like a reenactment. This is an actual like natural disaster that happened to this town. Holy moly. What an amazing time to be filming this little, I don't even know what to call this, a short film, a documentary film.
It's hard work keeping the waters back. Sometimes...
Dang, it's wild to see like American society in this like flooded river zone. I just like, it's so bizarre.
It comes almost up to the street signs.
I don't picture America ever flooding like this. I don't know why. Obviously, Americans have built cities in river floodplains before, but it's just, you never hear about floods like this happening.
But this year, it wasn't too bad, except for down by the river. Hardly came up to the third step of my house. And then the water went down pretty quick. And in a few days, you'd hardly know there'd been a flood at all.
I'm a statue, Robbie.
Come
Who
on,
am
you
I?
can swing me harder than that.
But you're
come
too
on,
heavy, Robbie.
Come on, swing me. Swing me real fast.
Who am I, Robbie? Who am I?
You are right there.
Look at Robbie go, would you?
Hey, look at me. Who am I?
I'm next, Bob. I'm next.
Well, gee whiz. Believe it or not.
Well, gee whiz. I like that phrase in the American like vocabulary. Ah, gee whiz. You know, it's so funny to hear it from like so long ago. I guess it makes more sense as like an old person saying than a young person saying. It's just like, ah, gee whiz. What we just witnessed was a native ah gee whiz in its natural habitat.
There was your boat again, Robert. I was so surprised I ran all the way across town to where Paul lives. Hey, Paul! Where are you? Hey, Paul!
What's up?
Come here and see what I got.
What is it?
Come here and see.
Gee whiz. How did you get the boat?
Flood washed it right up
Gee whiz, how did you get the boat?
on our front porch. Let's go launch it, Paul.
Paul,
Well-
come on. Aren't you gonna
Oh God, I have a bad feeling about where this is about to go.
play?
I'm sorry, Robbie, but I'm playing a game right now. Some other time.
Dang, poor Robbie, man. Just trying to mend the wounds of this country. This little actor did get the sad walk with your head down direction really well, though. He is acting his ass off, looking like he's just disappointed.
Hey, Robbie! Robbie, wait for me!
It was Paul. He come to help me after all. And so Robert B.
What sort of landscape are they even on right now? This is like a concrete pyramid from like Blade Runner. Are they really near a river?
That's why Paul and I are writing this letter to you.
Is this like a levee or something? It's just like all concrete. This is like the last sort of environment I'd expect by a river.
You see, Robert, we thought you'd like to know how your boat sort of brought two old friends back together again.
It brought two old friends back together again. That's a bit of a stretch. He didn't want to hang out with you for like 1 second. Wow, see how this boat just mended race relations within America? That's amazing.
But there will be days when the vast lower river will seem without end. Memphis, Vicksburg, Natchez, and at last, with luck, New Orleans, great trading and manufacturing center, river port and port of the world, freighters loading for Brazil, Java.
You know, it is wild. I'd never really thought about it, but New Orleans is like the head of the Mississippi River. It should be like where all like American goods exit the country from, really. Or I guess maybe New York, but like New Orleans really is like a vital city in the American geography.
The Indies, and it will be here that our tiny craft will need all the luck in the world. And its luck will hold. Thrown up by a paddle wheel. Carried downriver, where, free once more, it drifts off course into a mysterious land.
That was another good shot. I know that was like a very brief shot, but you can see how close to the water the camera is right here as the boat is drifting over the water's surface. Like this film camera, you have to understand how big the film camera is and how hard it must have been, how risky it must have been to put it in like near, it looks like it's almost in the water. It might have been like on a stand in the water actually to get this shot. Just again, something you don't think about and nobody appreciates about this old sort of stuff is how they got such, you know, fascinating shots.
Off course into a mysterious land of moss.
All right, now we're entering the bayou, though.
Of Cajun boys, with French names like Villiers, Duchesne, Aumont, moving silently through a Louisiana bayou. And here, too, our boat will need luck.
What's that over there, John? It's a little boat. What's it say in the sail? Down the Mississippi. Down the Mississippi? It's off course. I wonder how it... John, look out! Gators!
Wow, I didn't realize I was watching an action movie, too. Jeez.
And its luck will continue. In a lonely tidal bay.
Pretty good cast, Pierre.
Best of all, look what we caught.
Well, he's way off course. We'll see that he gets back.
But on its way to the South Pass, the channel to the sea, it passes a Gulf shrimp fleet running before a storm warning, a tropical hurricane.
Well, some things never change.
And now it lies landlocked and lost at land's end. lost and unnoticed for days, or weeks, or months. But then,
Dear Robert Beagrass, I just knew it could happen.
You know, I don't believe that every single one of these kids knew how to pronounce this kid's last name, and I didn't. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm jealous or envious or something, but I just don't believe that these kids would read that name and just know there's a silent S at the end. All right, I'm just gonna say it, I don't believe that part. My immersion has been broken by that.
Have hundreds of letters by now, Robert, and maybe ours won't be the last, for we've painted a new message on your sail, around the world.
Thing, is this setting up the sequel? Is this going to be like a whole series now? Like, oh man, down the Mississippi, around the world, and back again?
Little boy in Minnesota to people along the Mississippi.
I wonder if you did this now, what the results would be. Like, if anyone would find it and, like, send you something.
And here, at the river...
Because I feel like I do believe that, like, somebody would bother sending a letter if they found a boat on the river back in 1950, you know? But I don't know if anyone would care if they did that today.
In to the peoples of the world.
To get somebody to send a letter today is probably a lot harder.
Now where is it bound? And who will bring it ashore?
Alright, so that was interesting. I guess I'll let the credits play, but I'll be honest, I was a little let down. I am glad that we got to explore the different ethnic groups of the Mississippi, but I feel like it should have been more so. I feel like I wanted to learn, like, the history behind, you know, why the Germans were in the Gutenberg town and why the, you know, Chippewa were there. Like, the Chippewa didn't get to tell their story at all, you know what I'm saying? Like, and neither did, like, that black kid. Like, like, there was no, like, oh, I'm here because of, like, history or anything. It's like, oh, no, we're all just friends. We're all just American buddies. There's no animosity between any of these people groups or anything. But at the same time, it is like encouraging and nice to watch this like perspective of like American harmony that like took hold over this period where like there were multiple racial groups that needed to find some sort of hegemony between them. And it's interesting to think that this was like the first educational film that like really displayed and really celebrated those like diversities, right? Like this is the beginning of like, I don't want to say this is the beginning of like inclusivity or whatnot, because people are gonna hate that, but this is the beginning of like the American identity, including more than just like the white settler, I guess, is what we're seeing here. It's like Americans are also like the, you know, the native people who live up the river, or like the, you know, the African American people who live in the South, you know, like we're starting to see the vision of America as this multicultural place take form right before our eyes. You know, again, it's unfortunate that we didn't get to go into like more depth, but you know, what do you expect out of something from 1952? So that was the people along the Mississippi. I definitely learned a thing or two. I hope you did too. And I think we are gonna cut to black.